All right. Once you are inside the auditorium, you may remove the mask because now we are sitting in the according to the health protocol, 2 meters from each other. So yes, thank you very much. So that it would be more convenient. Yes. And before we start the official program, I would like to now invite the VIP to proceed to the high table for giving speech. Thank you very much. All right. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues and friends from all over the world who join us virtually today. We would like to welcome you all to this commemorative event in the Asia-Pacific region to mark the United Nations Day for South Cooperation. And my name is Luis Mongkon Sapkun, Advocacy Advisor from the United Nations Office for South Cooperation, or UNOSSC. I will be your MC for this event. Before we get started, as a matter of health protocol, I would like to draw your attention to a short video on COVID-19 precautionary measures. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the United Nations Conference Center, Bangkok. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, your safety is our first priority, and we have taken precautionary measures for the protection of everyone in the conference center. All personnel entering the UN premises are subject to thermal screening tests. Hand sanitizers are available throughout the conference center, together with instructions on the correct hygiene procedures. Guidance on preventive measures is displayed around the facility, including contact details of health service providers in Bangkok. All conference halls, meeting rooms, and public spaces have been reconfigured to ensure physical distancing, and we are supporting virtual participation in every way we can. A list of on-site participants and their contact details will be collected before each meeting to enable contact tracing if necessary. Food and beverage facilities follow strict hygiene protocols. An isolation room is ready for any meeting participant with COVID-19 symptoms, fever, and respiratory symptoms such as cough, shortness of breath, and breathing difficulties, so that medical evaluations can be conducted. For more information and concerns, please contact the UN Medical Service at 1333, 1352, 1353, 1761. We kindly ask for you to self-monitor your condition and adhere to current health-related instructions. Thank you for your cooperation, and we wish you a successful conference. Stay healthy. Stay safe.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, To recognize the importance of South-South cooperation, the United Nations General Assembly designated 12th of September the date of adoption of the Buenos Aires Plan of Action for promoting and implementing technical cooperation among developing countries in 1978 as the United Nations Day for South-South cooperation. The event today is jointly organized by the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, or UNOSSC, United Nations Volunteer, or UNV Program, and Thailand International Cooperation Agency, or TICA, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand. We will start with the opening session, as we have a video message from Mr. Jorge Chediak, Director of the UNOSSC and Envoy of the Secretary General on South-South Cooperation.
Dear friends, I am Jorge Chediak, the Director of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and Envoy of the Secretary General. It is my pleasure to greet Mr. Patarat Hongtong, the Director General of TICA of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Thailand, Ms. Geeta Sabarwal, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Thailand, my dear friend and colleague Olivier Adam, the Executive Coordinator of the United Nations Volunteers, UNV, Mr. Caveza Hadi, Deputy Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, and all other colleagues, friends, participants of this event. Good morning to all of you. It is my pleasure to join this celebration in marking the UN Day for South-South Cooperation in Asia and the Pacific region after the commemorative event we had last Thursday at the United Nations headquarters in New York. This is the first day for South-South Cooperation organized by the regional UNOSSC office in the Asia Pacific since the second high-level conference on South-South Cooperation, BAPA Plus 40, that took place in March of 2019. That conference recognized the promise and the significant contribution of South-South and triangular cooperation to the Sustainable Development Agenda. The COVID-19 pandemic has dented many of those hopes and retarded the progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. With the unprecedented threats and uncertainties ushered by COVID-19, the current crisis is a stark reminder of humanity's common fate and the need for the world to work together to meet the challenges ahead of us. This is a message at the center of the principle of South-South cooperation. Solidarity and people-to-people connectivity are central to South-South cooperation. It is thus with pleasure that we celebrate this people-to-people connectivity through the launch of a South-South in Action publication prepared by UNV, the UN volunteers, and the Thailand International Cooperation Agency. The 3 case studies of the publication capture the essence of this type of cooperation, of South-South cooperation, including the dimension of volunteerism. And also, I really want to express my satisfaction of the contribution of the great leadership of Thailand and also the volunteers are making to building a better world. Congratulations to TICA and UNV. Our regional office has also conducted a survey with Asia Pacific countries on the priorities for COVID-19 recovery and South-South cooperation. My colleague Dennis Nkala will share with you the findings of how countries in the region wish to mobilize South-South cooperation efforts to recover from the pandemic. As I mentioned before, this pandemic is denting the prospects of achieving the 2030 goals, and for the first time we have a reduction in the Human Development Index at the global level. At the same time, it should provide us for an opportunity, as our Secretary General says, to build back better. And South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation should be an essential component of this effort. I want to also confirm that the Thailand representative to the United Nations this Thursday announced that the next South-South Global Development Expo will be hosted by Thailand and UNOSSC. Please allow me to convey my gratitude to the government of Thailand through your Director General and to the ESCAP Executive Secretary through my dear friend Caveza. I want to finalize by saying this will be my last UN Day for South-South cooperation as Director of the Office. I am very proud of the partnerships we have in the Asia-Pacific region, of the great achievements of the Office, and also the example the region is giving to the world on how to put South-South cooperation to the service of the betterment of societies. I will be leaving my post, but I will remain committed to South-South cooperation and to promoting the example and contributions of your region to building a better world. Thank you very much, and we'll be in touch. Dear friends.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chediak. Please, next, please welcome Ms. Geeta Sabharwal, United Nations Resident Coordinator in Thailand, and she will deliver her own remarks and the statement from the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, on the UN Day for South-South Cooperation.
Of the Secretary General on United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation. The COVID-19 pandemic is devastating lives and livelihoods around the world. It poses the greatest risks to developing countries and to vulnerable people and communities. As we mark this year's United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation, we are highlighting the power of the Global South to support and advance sustainable development even during these challenging times. Southern countries are demonstrating the spirit of South-South cooperation, equal partnership, and global solidarity during the pandemic by collaborating in science, technology, and innovation, delivering medical supplies, providing financial resources, sending health workers and experts to bridge gap in capacity and sharing best practices. South-South and triangular cooperation must also have a central place in our preparation for a strong recovery. They can never replace official development assistance or the responsibilities of the Global North set out in the Addis Ababa Action Agenda and the Paris Agreement. But we will need the full contributions and cooperation of the Global South to build more resilient economies and societies and implement the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations is playing its part in supporting South-South and triangular cooperation through the pandemic by fast-tracking financial allocations for developing countries as they cooperate with each other and with development banks and agencies. As we look beyond the immediate crisis, the United Nations will continue to stand with the Global South. Let us coordinate our efforts to scale up Southern development successes, share them widely through enhanced cooperation, build a strong recovery, and achieve the SDGs by 2030. Thank you. Let me move on to my message. I wanted to take this opportunity to say a couple of words. So Director General, Thailand International Cooperation Agency, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Patarathong Thong, Director of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation and Special Envoy of the Secretary General, Mr. Hore Chekedi, Deputy Executive Secretary, UNOSSC, Mr. Caveza, Hadi, Excellencies, distinguished partners, volunteers, and UN colleagues. Swadika. It's an honor to be celebrating together with you the UN Day for South-South Cooperation in Thailand. South-South and triangular cooperation are deemed as critical contributors to the Sustainable Development Agenda. In this regard, Thailand has led by example by becoming a regional leader and ensuring South-South cooperation is a key pillar in the United Nations Partnership Framework for the country. The timing for this event could not have been better, as we seek to recover and build back better from the pandemic. Countries have come to realize the commitment of people who volunteer and support others during times of crisis in inspiring ways, both on-site and online. Thailand has also benefited from a culture of generosity among the Thai population. As the Prime Minister recently noted in his speech at the UN, there are more than 10 million volunteers in the country. This includes the 1 million voluntary health workers who were critical to contact tracing and awareness raising, the two key reasons for the successful management of the pandemic in the country. That is the depth of social capital that can be drawn upon to help the country as it recovers. I believe this whole of society approach for tackling the pandemic will set a trend in the region and globally. The UN and Thailand, together with the UNV regional office, have launched the Voluntary Force program to bring on board young people to volunteer with UN agencies. This has been a big success. My office alone has 5 such volunteers. The tradition of volunteerism has made Thailand a hub of knowledge and good practice for neighboring countries. The Friends from Thailand Volunteer Program is another testament to the criticality of development cooperation, solidarity, and mutual understanding. It is great to see volunteers within this program working and living with communities, transferring their skills in agriculture, public health, architecture, and education, and acquiring new skills themselves. It's also exciting to learn that Cambodia and China are realizing the benefits of South-South cooperation through volunteering. This is true people-to-people diplomacy, which creates equal partnerships and contributes towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I commend the Thailand International Cooperation Agency of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which has been the leading light as a southern partner and a new donor agency championing triangular cooperation and volunteerism. The UN in Thailand is also working closely with the Thailand International Cooperation Agency to develop a more effective strategy for South-South and triangular cooperation to impactfully share development lessons to advance SDGs across borders. I truly welcome the publications South-South Volunteering as a Driving Force for Development, Experiences from Asia and the Pacific, and look forward to hearing from partners and volunteers from Thailand, Cambodia, and China today. The UN in Thailand stands ready to facilitate South-South and triangular cooperation and volunteerism and cultivate citizens who can fully participate in national and global society. I would like to express my appreciation for the continued partnership of the Royal Thai government in working with the UN towards the SDGs. I would also like to express my gratitude for the collaboration between Thailand International Cooperation Agency, the Office of South-South Cooperation, and UNV in bringing us this important publication today. Finally, my deepest thanks to all the volunteers in Thailand and beyond for the inspiration and efforts to help us all achieve sustainable development. Thank you, and Khop Kun Ka.
Thank you, Mr. Sabrawal, for your speech. Next, we also have a video message from Mr. Olivier Adam, Executive Coordinator of the UNV program, co-organizer of today's event. Let's watch.
Esteemed Director General of the Thailand International Cooperation Agency, Ms. Patarat Ong Tong. My dear colleagues from the United Nations system, Mr. Caveza Hadi, Deputy Executive Secretary of the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, Ms. Geeta Sabarwal, UN Resident Coordinator for Thailand, and my old friend Jorge Chediek, Director of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me start by wishing you all a happy United Nations Day on South-South Cooperation, an ideal date to hold this special event. In this time of global crisis, solidarity between people and communities is even more important than ever. Volunteerism exists in every society and reflects the critical human values of mutual aid, service, community building, and engagement. Volunteering and South-South cooperation share the common principles of mutuality, reciprocity, respect, and equality, and also foster participatory approaches to development. For countries of the Global South and their development partners, it is critical to document lessons learned and share knowledge, especially in these times of crisis, so as to strengthen the quality of the support and further enhance solidarity. At the United Nations Volunteers Programme, we are proud to have partnered with the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation to prepare and launch this publication, which is titled South-South Volunteering as a Driving Force for Development, Experiences from the Asia and Pacific region. I would also like to thank the governments of Cambodia, China, and Thailand for partnering with us in these efforts. In particular, the Thailand International Cooperation Agency, the Beijing Volunteer Federation, and the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports of Cambodia. My thanks go also to all the organizations, stakeholders, and volunteers featured in this publication for their inputs in producing this valuable edition of the South-South and Triangular Cooperation in Action publication series. In this regard, let me reiterate my special thanks to the Thailand International Cooperation Agency and you, Madam Director General, for providing funding to make this publication happen. The publication we are launching today reflects UNV's belief that South-South and Triangular cooperation and volunteerism are mutually reinforcing and help build synergies on driving forward sustainable development. The case studies analyzed demonstrate clearly the value added and effectiveness provided by South-South volunteers. I sincerely hope that partners from the Global South can continue to document case studies and stories to show how South-South cooperation in volunteerism can make development practices more participatory, inclusive, and needs-based. I would like to extend a special thanks to all my colleagues from UNV and UN Office of South-South Cooperation for Asia and the Pacific, who were involved in coordinating this publication and in organizing today's event. I trust that all of you participating today will leave with an enhanced understanding of the roles of volunteerism and South-South cooperation in supporting communities through the current crisis and into the future. Once again, my best wishes on this very special day to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Next, please welcome Mr. Caveza Hadi, Deputy Executive Secretary for Sustainable Development of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Kun Patrat, Director General of the Thailand International Cooperation Agency, my dear UN colleagues and friends, Gita, Neil, Dennis, Shalina, and our colleagues in New York, Olivier and Jorge. I'm delighted to join all of you this morning for our own special celebration. It's in a way a great pleasure to join this commemoration of the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation. As many of the speakers before me have said, this is the time for us to, in a way, celebrate the principles of solidarity, empathy embodied in South-South cooperation, and to recognize really the power of such cooperation for bringing about real change. And really we can see and be inspired by literally hundreds of these stories and examples of change in the publication that was mentioned on good practices in South-South and Triangular Cooperation for Sustainable Development that was launched last week at the commemoration of the event for the for the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation in New York. The examples of collaboration in this publication, at least the ones that ESCAP has been associated with, range from sustainable agricultural mechanization to working with Asia-Pacific civil registrars to supporting countries with twinning arrangements to help them with the SDG voluntary national reviews. All of these demonstrate really the breadth of possibility for successful South-South cooperation. And of course, we hope that these examples and many, many others of good practices will feature prominently at the 2021 Global South-South Development Expo that is to be organized by the UN Office of South-South Collaboration, UNOSSC, and of course hosted by the government of Thailand, as Jorge mentioned in his opening as well. But even as we take great pride in this growing body of work, of this growing momentum that's generated for South-South cooperation, we should recognize that our region is far from the path of sustainability. When COVID-19 emerged early this year, the countries of Asia-Pacific were already lagging in all but 2 of the Sustainable Development Goals, as was shown by our own ESCAP SDG progress report. So in many ways, COVID merely exposed some of the existing fault lines within our region. And these fault lines are exemplified by widespread inequality, by worrying levels of ecosystem damage, greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, and really by high levels of vulnerability including to climate-induced disasters. The unprecedented response that we've seen in our region to COVID, however, points to really the possibility of a very different future. In a way, the seeds of change are buried in the many financial and fiscal stimulus packages that have raised the levels of investment in people and in healthcare, once believed to be even unaffordable, and targeted segments of the economy and society that, to be honest, had been largely forgotten. So in that context, we have really, I think, seeds of hope, as I put it, for change and for the change that will bring about this new future that many mentioned in Building Back Better. And it's really hard to mention a different future without a special word on volunteerism, right? Volunteerism, including, of course, South-South volunteerism, can mobilize large numbers of people and really be, in a way, the catalyst for transformation. And with only 10 years left to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, it is clear that transformative action is very much needed in our region to address what I mentioned, the entrenched inequalities, to protect the most marginalized and vulnerable people from disasters, and to take actions against climate change and its impacts. I recently had the honor to address the regional discussion on reimagining volunteering for the 2030 agenda on the sidelines of the high-level political forum on sustainable development this year. And I think that discussion really showed clearly how much our region has gained from volunteerism and the innovation, the agility, the activism of volunteer groups. And this is, of course, especially true during the time of the COVID-19 pandemic, when our volunteers have been bringing much needed help to people with disabilities, to the elderly, to the most vulnerable and isolated groups. In fact, like Gita, last time that we talked about this, I went as far as to suggest that volunteers may have been the magic ingredient, right? The magic ingredient behind Thailand's success with managing the pandemic. But the role of volunteers, of course, goes way beyond just emergencies. In this regard, the publication that was mentioned a few times today, the South-South Volunteering as a Driving Force for Development, that shows experiences from our region of Asia Pacific, is very important because this document not only highlights the contribution of volunteerism, but it also helps us to in a way replicate and build on these initiatives and to to make the movement of volunteerism in our region even stronger going forward. And at the Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, ESCAP, we are absolutely convinced that South-South cooperation and volunteerism will be really critical means to chart a pathway for our region's inclusive, resilient, and green recovery from the pandemic, which incidentally is also the focus of our next Commission session, where the highest level countries will come together to chart exactly that, a green recovery, an inclusive recovery, a resilient recovery from the pandemic. But before the Commission, allow me to make just one small plug. The third Asia-Pacific South-South and Triangle Cooperation Forum, organized or co-organized by the government of Thailand, ESCAP, and the UN Office of South-South Cooperation, will take place on the 25th of November this year. And it's really another opportunity for us to maintain the momentum of South-South cooperation in our region, especially in the context of building back better. So allow me to finish by really thanking the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, Jorge in particular, as he moves on to greener pastures, the United Nations Volunteer Program, and of course the Thailand International Cooperation Agency, for bringing us together again today. It is important from time to time to get together and to sort of mark success, to celebrate success, and to chart our way forward. And we appreciate you having done that. And as we look forward, please do count on us as your partner, all of you, in fostering South-South cooperation and enhancing the role of volunteers in sustainable development in Asia Pacific. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sahidi. We are very honored to have Khun Pattarat Hongthong, Director General of the Thailand International Cooperation Agency, or TICA, under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand with us. TICA has closely supported the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation since its reopening of the office in the Asia-Pacific region in 2017. Khun Pattarat, please deliver your remarks.
Ms. Gita Sabrawal, UN Residence Coordinator for Thailand, and Mr. Caveza, Hadi, the Deputy Executive Secretary of UNOSSC, and of course Mr. Dennis Nakala, UNOSSC Regional Coordinator for Asia Pacific, distinguished participants, and ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it is my honor to be here today at the commemorations of the UN Day for South-South Cooperation 2020, and for the launching of the South-South in Action publication, this book, which entitled South-South Volunteering as a Driving Force for Development, Experiences from Asia and Pacific. And on behalf of TICA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand, I join all of you to welcome you all in this hall, and of course to those who attend this event virtually. And I'm sure that the impact of this event can reach far beyond this hall. Together, we in Asia Pacific will emerge from the pandemic together, better and stronger. At this time of the global crisis, partnership through South-South and triangular cooperation is more important than ever. In order to create an environment that is conducive to post-COVID recovery and building a resilient society, international cooperation at all levels are needed for the world to get back on track for SDG attainment, with the emphasis on human security, immunity, and resilience. Thailand believes that good practices and knowledge sharing are the cornerstones of South-South cooperation progress. We have taken part in many advocacy efforts in partnership with various partners through many activities, such as the publications, secondment of our staff to UNOSSC, and providing forum for discussions, and also the sharing of homegrown development approach, which is we call the sufficiency economy philosophy in the development program that we have worked with many countries. And to promote sustainable development through the SEP, we see that it is a chance to put the special focuses on fostering self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and resilience on all levels, from individual to household and community. And I believe that approach of putting resilience building first in sustainable community development is very, very relevant today, given the fact that COVID pandemic has shown how fragile our society is and how a truly sustainable world can only be built on a resilient foundation. Recognizing the significance of volunteerism as a powerful means for sustainable development, TICA launches a Friends from Thailand, or FFT, volunteer program since 2003, which now still remains our major volunteer scheme internationally until today. And FFT's mission is to cultivate friendship and better understandings between the people of Thailand and those our partners in development partners. The program promotes partnership at the local level, providing technical advice in a number of development areas of Thailand's expertise, namely agriculture, products development, ecotourism, public health, and community development based on SCP, which to name a few. And here, just 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister of Thailand visited this building at the Global Compact Thailand Network Forum 2020. He delivered his vision on how we can collectively turn the socio-economic crisis from the COVID-19 pandemic into opportunities. One of his messages was to the importance of volunteerism in ensuring participation of stakeholders and in localizing SDGs and accelerating action on the ground. With FFT volunteers, Thailand is able to extend this approach far beyond geographical barriers and to reach peoples of Thailand and the countries in which FFT volunteers operate. Through FFT program, I share with my colleagues, we recognize the role of the youth as active players in helping countries achieve SDG in line with national development strategy priorities. During the periods of 1 or 2 years that they work in each country, our volunteers introduce skills and techniques employed in Thailand, which are new to and appreciated by the locals. While they also learn and admire the local rich cultures and way of living. This is an excellent way to engage younger generation who are keen in global affairs and have strong will to make the world a better place. In the past 16 years that we operate FFT program, we have sent already more than 160 Thai volunteers to a number of countries across the continent, from Bhutan to Benin, from Myanmar to Mozambique, for example. And one of the volunteers also present here today. He is also featured in the publications that they will launch after this. And he will share with us his experience and his impression during his mission in Benin. So on behalf of TICA, I would like to express our deep appreciation to UNV and UNOSSC in making this publication and the launching event possible. I wish also extend my sincere appreciation to all those who are involved in making of this book. And I encourage us to have a chance to read this book to get a clearer picture of how volunteerism can contribute to South-South cooperation and to the international society as a whole. And distinguished participants, in closing, I'm pleased to take this opportunity to announce that the Royal Thai government, in collaboration with our long-term partner, ESCAP and UNOSSC, will co-host the 11th Global South-South Development, or GSSD Expo, in 2021, which is next year in Bangkok. The expo has to be postponed from this year due to the pandemic, and we hope that we will be able to welcome you next year for the opportunities to showcase successful South-South and triangular development solutions and experiences from your countries and institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Patharat. Now I would like to invite Kun Patarat, Ms. Sabrawal, Mr. Hadi, Mr. Neil Wune, Regional Director, United Nations Development Coordination Office, Ms. Shalina Mia, UNV Regional Manager of Asia and the Pacific, and Mr. Dennis Ngala, Regional Coordinator and Representative for Asia and the Pacific of UNOSSC, to come to the front for a photo. Please. All right. Now I would like to invite the VIPs to your seat, and then I would like to invite Mr. Ngala and Ms. Mia onto the stage for the second section. All right. Without further ado, we now move on to the second session. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, part of the theme of this event is COVID-19. Countries in the global south have been severely affected by the pandemic. A few weeks ago, the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, or UNOSSC, launched a survey for Asian Pacific countries with the objectives to better capture the scale of South-South collaboration in the COVID-19 response and recovery, and furthermore, to identify some major areas of demand for South-South cooperation going forward. Now let us welcome Mr. Dennis Ngala, Regional Coordinator and Representative for Asia and the Pacific of UNOSSC, to present the findings of the survey.
Good morning. Thank you, MC. Happy United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation to everybody in the Pacific region, both people here and those that are joining us virtually. I'm going to make a presentation on the survey that we just did with a purpose to access direct information from the countries on a response and recovery from COVID, what is happening right now. Another objective was to have informed options for South-South cooperation in supporting countries for their recovery from the crisis and gain insights on what they would like to be done in future programming. And lastly, but not least, we also wanted to be able to tell a better story about how the countries in the South have collaborated in responding and in future planning for recovery from the pandemic. Very quickly about the survey, we sent it out on the 17th and it was open until the 8th. We reached out to 30 countries. And out of those 30 countries, 17 responded, which is a 57%. rate of return on the survey. I should mention that 9 out of the 17 countries were from the Pacific, so we had an amazing response from the Pacific. We do have a sub-regional office there. I think that's one of the reasons. In terms of the questions, we had 4 clusters of questions. The first one was to look at who has supported who in the COVID response. And the second group of questions were looking at the 3 priority areas of health, economic, and social impacts. And the third part was to look at today, what are your major priorities as a country? And last but not least, we're looking forward in terms of the tools of South-South cooperation that could be deployed in the future work. And now looking at the results, if you look at the first group of bar charts there, this is countries supported by others, and you see that regional support and support from the other countries are quite prominent. And then secondly, if you look at the second set of bar charts, they are looking at what these countries who responded contributed. And what we found in the analysis is that over 50% of the countries did contribute to other countries. And so what this tells us that collaboration was quite widespread among the countries. The few countries, LDCs and small developing island states, of course, that were not in a good position to be able to support other countries. And then looking at the areas of response, starting with the healthcare, we found a prevalence of countries who said they would like to improve the healthcare infrastructure in the country for responding to COVID. And secondly, the issue of improving early warning systems was also quite high, as was protecting the health of the workforce in the country. I think this reflected on what was going on during the response. We also looked at very quickly at the economy, and here we found that emphasis on the stimulus packages was quite high, with 16 of the 17 countries responding, said you do need to have stimulus for affected industries and also for small and medium enterprises. We also found that there was some response pertaining to promoting green recovery and support for business digital transformation. I'll say a few more words later about this. On the key findings on the economy, we started to see some typologies of countries emphasizing different aspects. For example, 4 out of the 7 LDCs really emphasized business digital transformation as a way forward for South-South cooperation collaboration. And 7 out of the 9 Pacific countries were very much focused on green recovery and climate change. On the social response, we found that there was a prevalence of emphasis on cash assistance and access to social services. One of the things that I want to mention here is that when we've been talking about these issues, we have emphasized migrant workers. We have emphasized address of stigmatization. But if you look at this, the countries didn't really emphasize that. What does it tell us? A need for that dialogue with the countries and our partners on some of the issues that may not be affecting so many countries, but at the same time may be happening in the region. Now, the key findings when we ask the questions about today, what are your greatest needs? Because we wanted to see at what stage these countries are. And we found that testing capacity is still very, very important at the top. 15 of the 17 countries mentioned it. Hospital capacity, amazingly, is still up there. And public service delivery during the lockdown was another aspect that was looked at. But you see, supply of necessities is still quite high in terms of PPEs. And so what did this tell us? That the expectation is that this pandemic is not over. And even for the countries in the Pacific that have not been so much affected, they're still prepared to get ready in the incidents that the pandemic comes to their backyard. And also we thought that maybe a lot of countries are preparing for the future. This is not just for today, that if something happens next year, they'll be found in a better position. And then finally, on the tools of South-South cooperation that could be applied, we found that in generally countries were favoring working together, joint planning and implementation of a recovery plan, sharing the data, and also boosting all types of cooperation for sustainable development in trade and financing. And so to summarize this, I think it clearly shows the principles of South-South cooperation that the countries think they can get out of this by working together rather than working individually. And so in terms of the way forward on this survey, for us, we thought we found that countries are willing to share some information on what they are doing on South-South cooperation, and this could be useful for sharing with others as well. And secondly, before we embarked on this in Asia Pacific, our headquarters had said, go ahead and pilot this and see what kind of results you get, and maybe we can scale it up to the global level. And what we found out is that I think we can gather very useful data from the countries on South-South cooperation. But however, when we engage them, we have to tell them who needs that information and how the information will be used. We also think there's a need for dialogue on priorities. As I said, some of the things that as development practitioners we look at and think are very important, we may have to discuss with some of the member states so that they help each other resolve these issues. And sharing information with other countries, we also believe that will strengthen the whole process of South-South cooperation. And we think a better way of responding to the demands of the Global South is actually to listen to them, to listen what they want. In the past, we have seen that even in cases where a lot of resources are provided, there are usually gaps that countries want to be addressed. And this is where the UN Office for South-South Cooperation has usually stepped in to try to support the countries. And last but not least, we have to look at this special issue of looking at clusters of countries of a certain typology and supporting what they really think should be the priorities in their area. And in this case, I reiterate again that the Pacific region showed that their concerns are mostly on green recovery and climate change. So we gave ourselves very little time, but I think this does show the promise of what we can do. And in the future, we might want to engage other people in doing similar surveys so that we can be better informed in terms of what the countries need from us on South-South cooperation. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ngala, for your presentation. Now let's move on to the next session. South-South in Action is UNOSSC flagship advocacy and knowledge series. It is an opportunity for developing countries and partners to publish their successful policies, initiatives, and activities that led to the achievement of their development agendas. Today, we are pleased to launch a South-South in Action publication that is jointly compiled by UNV and TICA, involving case studies from Cambodia, China, and Thailand. Please welcome Ms. Chalina Mia, UNV Regional Manager of Asia and the Pacific, to give us an introduction to this report.
Thank you. Esteemed Ms. Patarat Hongtong, Director General of the Thailand International Cooperation Agency, Mr. Caveza Hadi, Deputy Executive Secretary of the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, Ms. Geeta Sabharwal, UN Resident Coordinator in Thailand, Mr. Denin Kala, Asia Pacific Regional Coordinator of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, our partners that join us online from China, Mr. Li Jiang, Secretary General, Beijing Volunteer Service Federation, And from Cambodia, Ms. Roy Suchit, Director General of Youth, Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports, their participants, volunteers, and friends. I'm proud to present to you today our publication, South-South Volunteering as a Driving Force for Development, Experiences from the Asia and the Pacific. The idea about this publication came after United Nations Volunteers and Thailand International Cooperation Agency, TICA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, organized the South-South Knowledge Exchange on Youth Volunteering for the Sustainable Development Goals, sharing sufficiency economy philosophy and other approaches from ASEAN countries back in 2017. This event brought us to realize the need for countries' strong desire to learn about volunteering that transforms across the borders and constantly build partnerships for peer learning. We also came to appreciate that the Friends from Thailand program, the Poverty Reduction Among Youth in Cambodia project, and project on strengthening volunteerism along the Belt and Road in China, all are implemented in different countries and by different partners, but all make substantive contributions to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda through South-South and triangular cooperation. I invite you to read about the different approaches of volunteerism programs from Thailand, Cambodia, and China that use various South-South and triangular cooperation instruments. Through this publication, we hope that we further enhance the understanding of the role of volunteerism and South-South cooperation and development benefits it brings now and in the future. I would like to thank our partners and volunteers who contributed to make this publication come to life. Today, I will not go through the whole publication, but let me concentrate on the 5 recommendations on expanding South-South volunteerism in achieving the Sustainable Development Agenda. First, enhancing knowledge exchanges. This publication was only possible because volunteers and volunteer organizations have been documenting their volunteer journey and their experiences. Because of this, we were able to put together evidence that is crucial in understanding the incredible development results that South-South volunteerism is already bringing. For example, the China case study illustrated that research and knowledge sharing on international volunteering can expand the regulations for international volunteering. It also builds capacity of national volunteer involving organizations to become better integrated into a country's foreign development assistance system, as well as the international development ecosystem. However, gaps in evidence and need for exchanging practices remains on how to document volunteer contributions to recipient country national development strategies and broader sustainable development goals efforts. The second recommendation, strengthen partnerships, networks, and platforms. It is evident through this publication that strong partnerships across countries and among people across nations have made these volunteer initiatives successful. For example, the strong partnerships built between the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports of Cambodia and the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sport of India through short-term exchange of volunteers can even create a formal reciprocal youth exchange program that can support youth of participant countries to become global citizens and strengthen people-to-people ties between countries. But we also need to realize that there need to be platforms for engagement to support South-South volunteerism. At the Global Technical Meeting, Reimagining Volunteering for Agenda 2030, an Asia-Pacific regional session held in July 2020, we heard government representatives from the region, as well as other volunteer stakeholders that have highlighted the need for appropriate platforms and networks to strengthen partnerships and facilitate knowledge sharing. It is also realizing the need for such platform that the United Nations Volunteers Program has launched the UNV Knowledge Portal and Good Practices database. The platform features volunteer projects globally, including projects on incorporating South-South cooperation. We believe that platforms of this nature, as a repository, can ensure better information sharing and easy access for valuable knowledge and evidence on volunteering. The third recommendation is providing a stronger voice for South-South cooperation and volunteering at regional and international levels. As highlighted in the publication, the Friends from Thailand program is aligned with national development priorities and bilateral foreign relations of Thailand, which is a commendable effort. Another angle to this is that looking at development through innovative Southern prisms, such as Thailand's sufficiency economy philosophy and Bhutan's measurement of prosperity through happiness rather than gross national product, has the potential to introduce alternative development concepts and to enrich Southern development pathways. Together with ESCAP, we have been working to ensure volunteering is on the agenda of the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development held annually, and that member states who receive ESCAP support are aware of various ways to engage volunteers in the SDG-related review processes. But we still need more integration and participations of volunteers, recognition of their development contributions with full spectrum of partners in the permanent mode. This can help volunteer communities to accelerate the SDGs in areas that the progress is much needed. The fourth recommendation, more investment is needed for volunteering programs in developing countries. In the case study of Cambodia, the IPSA Fund, India, Brazil, South Africa, has enabled the piloting of various volunteer initiatives that have resulted in what's now a national volunteering program, Volunteer for My Community. The South-South funding mechanism has also allowed the capacity building of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports to run national volunteer program schemes. This reiterates the crucial need for consistent funding mechanisms for South-South volunteering programming. On the other hand, future South-South development projects must include volunteering components to ensure greater SDGs attainment. We sincerely hope and look forward to discussing with you about how volunteering could be an approach in your upcoming development initiatives and programs. The fifth recommendation, empower new Southern voices to engage development. The United Nations Volunteers Program has committed to support South-South cooperation in volunteerism in our 2018-2021 strategic framework. The case studies in this publication demonstrate that South-South volunteers are effective and bring traits that other developing countries value. These include similar culture, adaptability to living in the community, and ability to build trust. Therefore, it is important we engage more volunteers in development through South-South cooperation to empower Southern voices in global development discussions. It's important that Southern partners also pay attention to providing opportunities for greater inclusion for traditionally marginalized groups, such as the elderly, minorities, indigenous people, and persons with disabilities. This will provide opportunities for peer-to-peer exchanges and learning among these groups and provide rich development dividends. As we celebrate the UN 75 this year, with just 10 years left to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, it is crucial that we give priority to these recommendations. As we step towards recovering from the unprecedented COVID-19 global crisis, these initiatives have the power to transform from the grassroots level and drive forward the sustainable development at a time when solidarity between communities is more important than ever. I invite all of you to read through the publication and learn more about how we can all come together for South-South and triangular cooperation as critical partners in achieving the SDGs during this decade of action. Happy reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mia, for your remarks. May I now invite Mrs. Sabrawal, Mr. Zahedi, Mr. Lune, Ms. Mia, Mr. Ndala to proceed to the front for the launching ceremony of the publication. Yes, same place, please. Thank you very much. Today, we also would like to share with you messages from the 3 volunteers who are part of the case studies captured in the publication. The first video is from Mr. Bun Chiang Bon, a volunteer from My Community program from Cambodia. Please have a watch.
My name is Bun Chiang Bon. I'm great and honored to be invited to join these important events. I'm happy to share my experience regarding to the volunteer for my community known as the VMC. I have been involved in a lot of volunteering programs, but VMC made me change a lot and I developed myself a lot. The VMC was established by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport in cooperation with the UNOSSC Cambodia. Provides the education to youth to know how to make project proposals and implement their project in their community to show the issues in their community, and also in some house they can build the needs of the communities as a whole. After joining the VMC in 2019, I found that I learned quite a very new skills, project proposals, project management, and also about fundraising to implementation the projects. First, I might say it's about the project proposals, because and so far in university and also in high school we never know about how to write a project proposals, like identify the issue or identify the needs of the community, targeted groups. But joining the VMC, all of that skill will be trained. And also it's about implementation, because if project is on the paper and then we go to implementation, so the problem is comes, so you have to solve that problem. So by joining that program, I know that how to deal with people, how to communicate with people, and also the fundraising. So normally we think that, oh, going to meet the people and ask them for money is the difficult thing when they never known us. But actually when we run the project as the benefit to the communities, not to ourselves, we found that a lot of people, they enjoy to give us money to implement the projects. Even the NGO, private sector, and even individuals, government officials, individuals, private officers, they are happy to contribute with us some money, and we take all this money to implement our projects. For my last word, I might say the VMC is very best program for both benefit to the youth itself. When they implement their project, they learn a lot both hard skill and soft skill, and also the benefit to the communities, because the community will get the benefit from the project implementations, and also for the ministry itself, because it will be promote volunteerism in our country, while the ministry is the lead of volunteerism in our country. And so by VMC, I see that more people, not only the young people, but everyone start to engage in the volunteerism. And also I would like to send to the ministry and also UNV, United Nations Volunteer for Cambodia, that initiate the VMC program, that I think that is a good platform for Cambodia's youth to find an experience to contribute to their society. And thank everyone, and I hope everyone you are safe from the COVID-19, and thank for your attention.
Next one, we will have a video message from Ms. Xi Meng from China. She is a United Nations volunteer in the Project Management Office of the United Nations Volunteer Beijing Volunteer Service Fund Federation Project.
Hello, I am Shimeng, a UN volunteer from China. It is a great honor to join you along with volunteers from Cambodia and Thailand. I'm volunteering as the Project Coordination Assistant for UNV-BVF Collaboration Project, strengthening China's involvement in the development of international volunteer service through South-South cooperation and the Belt and Road Initiative. The project has mainly contributed to developing sustainable communities and partnerships by empowering Chinese youth to be professional volunteers, active in communities of developing countries, promoting networking and cooperation among volunteers as well as volunteer-involving organizations, and enhancing South-South knowledge exchange on international volunteering and development. Basing on the sound cooperation with UNV for more than a decade, the project has been a significant step forward to strengthening capacity building, international cooperation, and people-to-people exchange in Beijing and in China. Multiple training and experience sharing activities have been quite conducive to volunteers and volunteer-involving organizations in Beijing to be involved in international volunteering. As international youth UN volunteers, talented young people from China have made more friends and broadened their understanding and engagement of international development through their assignments. Volunteers involving organizations in Beijing have developed more partnership with those organizations abroad. Overall, this project has greatly promoted the development of Beijing and China in different fields. Meanwhile, I believe UNV also got a deeper understanding of volunteering development in society of China through the collaboration. As a UN volunteer deployed in the Project Management Office, I also benefited from this experience professionally and personally. Professionally, in the aspect of enhanced project management and coordination capacity by engaging in project planning, implementation, as well as contributing to BVF's efforts to organize local volunteers for major events in Beijing. Moreover, a friendly and flexible working environment makes me enjoy what I do, primarily when my ideas are valued and implemented. Whenever I need support, colleagues from the UN Field Unit in China, regional office in Thailand, and the headquarters in Bonn, as well as my peers, are always there for me. Especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, when I was in my hometown, Hubei province, with my family. The daily updates about COVID-19, security guidelines, and phone calls from the UNV office in China were very beneficial, which inspires me to join many UN volunteers in China and other countries in the fight against COVID-19 in various ways. I'm proud to be contributing to sustainable development as a UN volunteer. I found my assignment valuable and significant when seeing and working with young talents volunteering to make the local communities a better place to live, to share, and to prosper through various project activities. I believe volunteering as an accelerator for sustainable development goals will play a vital role in addressing complicated and complex global problems. Thank you.
And last but not least, may I invite Kun Puttipum Asanok, a volunteer from the Friends of Thailand or FFT program, to share his experience. Kun Puttipum, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today and to share with you my experience working as a volunteer in Benin. During my one-year mission in Benin, I work with local farmers. For me, the feeling to explain my experience in Benin is joy. The joy is what happened to us when we allow ourselves to recognize how good things really are. The joy that happens when you realize that to enjoy life, you do not need to have everything, but to acknowledge the beauty of simple life and appreciate what you already have. My experience as a volunteer also enabled me to understand the true value of friendship and cooperation. It is clear that volunteer could not do everything, but our job are to reach out to local community, empower them, and help them reach their potential by participating in local development cooperations projects. The goodwill and the spirit of cooperation have made me and local villager in Benin good friends. The Friends from Thailand volunteer program promote the importance of volunteerism and promote local and people-to-people participation in project and in development cooperation. As local participation is important for success and sustainability of the projects, volunteer help the people-centered achievement of the SDG. During my assignment in Benin, I adopted the Sufficiency Economy Philosophy or SEP as a guide when working with local community and taking part in activity that promote the development. The SEP is a development approach that proved to be successful in guiding country from hardship to prosperity, such as my own country, Thailand. Through the adoption of SEP thinking and mindset, Thailand is known as the land of smile, and we have earned our prosperity through happiness. The SEP has also been clearly explained in the book that's launched today. Apart from SEP, another important aspect of my assignment there was to pass on agricultural knowledge. I work with friends in Benin to show local community about agricultural technique and practice and how to make extra food that can help them to have food security and better quality of life. In this era of economic disruption and changing social landscape, it is important for community around the world to at least have enough food to eat and safe place and good community to live. In other words, self-sufficiency is very important today, and it is our duty as people who have enough to help those who are less lucky. For this, I think cooperation is the right thing to do, and volunteerism is the one way everyone can do their part in making the world a better and happier place. More smile is what we want to see. I would like to say a special thank you to TICA for the chance to be a Friends from Thailand volunteer. Thank you, my friends in Benin, for being one of the best years of my life. And thank you, everyone, for allowing me to speak today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Khun Putipum. Maybe we can have another round of applause for the contribution of our volunteers worldwide. All right, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the last session of today's event. We have a virtual intervention from Mr. Ke Yu-cheng, permanent representative of China to the UNOSSC. Please.
Mr. Chair, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to participate in today's event on behalf of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China to Thailand and the Permanent Mission of China to ESCAP. First of all, I would like to express my deep appreciation to the United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation, UN Volunteer Program, and TICA for holding the event together. Also, I'd like to express my warm congratulations to today's UN Day for South-South Cooperation, and also congratulations to the launch of the publication of South-South Volunteer as a driving force for development experience from Asia and the Pacific. Dear Chair, South-South cooperation is the embodiment of the solidarity and the cooperation of the South-South countries. It is also a main driving force of global development. It is for the South countries to work together to address the challenge and realize cooperation and a win-win. Nowadays, we are facing the threat of unilateralism and protectionism. The global development also facing a challenge of unimbalanced. The Sustainable Development Agenda implementation is also lagging behind. The international society at this moment need to consist to the spirit of global solidarity and shared responsibility. China has always been a strong supporter and a contributor to South-South cooperation. At the initiative of the President Xi Jinping of China, China and the United Nations co-sponsored the China United Nations Peace and Development Fund to provide impetus to South-South cooperation and help the implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda of the developing countries. Particularly in the process of the combat of the COVID-19, China has received strong support and assistance from many countries. At the same time, China has provided medical resources and sending medical teams and sharing COVID-19 medical experience to more than 150 countries, regions, and international organizations. I have listened very carefully to the remarks of the volunteers from China, Cambodia, and Thailand. I'm deeply moved, and I also want to express my strong congratulations to the outstanding performance of them and through them to all the UN volunteers. The spirit of the volunteers represent solidarity, humanitarian, and devotion. The United Nations volunteers provide warmth and positive spirit globally and represent the new hope and strength for the future. China will continue to support South-South cooperation and working closely in partnership with other developing countries. And also we will support the work of the United Nations Volunteer Program. I expect the volunteers from China can work to the world through the UNV platform and provide their momentum, wisdom, and actions to the sustainable development and the peace and the development of the whole world. I thank you all.
Thank you. Next, we have another video intervention from Mr. Li Lei. He is the Deputy Secretary General of the Beijing Volunteer Service Federation. Please have a watch.
尊敬的各位联合国机构负责人，尊敬的各位与会嘉宾，女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家好！值此联合国男单日庆祝活动举办之际，我谨代表北京市志愿服务联合会